The economy is doing great. At least that's what we're told. Unemployment is low. The stock market keeps hitting record highs. Corporate profits are booming. GDP keeps growing. And according to many economists, things are actually pretty good. So here's a strange question. If the economy is doing so well, why does life feel so much worse? Why are people working longer hours, yet feeling more financially stressed? Why are salaries rising, while home ownership feels further away than ever? Why does every trip to the grocery store feel like a small financial emergency? And why does an entire generation increasingly feel like they're falling behind, even while living in one of the wealthiest periods in human history? Either millions of people are imagining the same thing, or we're measuring economic success in a very strange way. Because maybe the problem isn't that the economy is weak. Maybe the problem is that the economy can be strong, while the people inside it struggle. And once you understand that distinction, modern life starts making a lot more sense. To understand what's happening, we need to understand what economists actually mean when they say, the economy is doing well. Most people imagine that means people are doing well, but those are not the same thing. When economists talk about economic strength, they're usually talking about things like GDP, corporate profits, stock market performance, productivity, employment numbers. And all of those things matter, but here's the catch. None of those measurements directly ask a simple question. Are people actually feeling better? Because GDP can grow, while housing becomes unaffordable. Corporate profits can rise, while workers feel increasingly stressed. The stock market can soar, while half the country doesn't own meaningful stocks. And unemployment can be low, because people are working multiple jobs just to survive. The economy measures activity, but people measure experience. And those are often very different things, which creates a strange situation. The economic dashboard says everything is fine, while ordinary people increasingly feel like they're trapped in survival mode. Nowhere is this disconnect more obvious than housing. For decades, owning a home was considered one of the most important parts of financial stability. It wasn't just shelter, it was security, it was wealth, it was the foundation of the middle class. Today, for many young adults, home ownership feels less like a milestone and more like a fantasy. House prices rose dramatically, rent exploded, interest rates increased, down payments became enormous. And suddenly people weren't just competing against their neighbors, they were competing against investors, private equity firms, institutional buyers, and entire financial systems designed to treat housing as an asset, not a home. This creates a bizarre reality. Housing prices rising is often considered good news for the economy. But for millions of people, the exact same event feels devastating. Because what looks like economic success from one perspective looks like exclusion from another. And that's when many people started feeling that something was wrong. Not because the economy stopped growing, but because growth increasingly felt like it belonged to someone else. And housing isn't the only example. The same pattern appears almost everywhere. Healthcare, education, childcare, insurance, food, transportation. The cost of building a normal life keeps increasing. Meanwhile, modern workers are trapped inside a strange contradiction. They're earning more money than previous generations, yet many feel less secure. Because income isn't the only thing that matters. What matters is purchasing power. What matters is stability. What matters is whether your future feels attainable. And for many people, it increasingly doesn't. This is why so many economic discussions feel disconnected from reality. One side points to statistics, the other points to lived experience, and both are technically correct. The economy may genuinely be growing, but growth doesn't automatically create security, especially when most of the benefits flow toward assets, stocks, real estate, businesses, investments. Because once assets grow faster than wages, people who own assets become wealthier, while people who depend entirely on labor income slowly fall behind. And that gap compounds over time, year after year, decade after decade. This eventually creates what feels like two separate economies. The first economy belongs to asset owners. When housing prices rise, they benefit. When stocks rise, they benefit. When businesses become more profitable, they benefit. Economic growth feels tangible, visible, exciting. The second economy belongs primarily to wage earners. When rent rises, they pay more. When food prices rise, they pay more. When healthcare costs rise, they pay more. Economic growth feels distant, abstract, almost invisible. And this helps explain one of the biggest misunderstandings in modern society. People assume everyone experiences the economy in the same way, but they don't. Two people can live in the same city, read the same headlines, look at the same stock market, and have completely different realities. One feels richer every year, the other feels trapped. Not because one works harder, not because one is smarter, but because the rules increasingly reward ownership more than labor. And once an economy reaches that point, economic success and human well-being begin drifting apart. So is the economy actually strong? Maybe. The data certainly suggests that parts of it are. But that's not the question most people are really asking. What people want to know is, why doesn't it feel strong? Why does financial security feel further away? Why does the future feel more fragile? Why does every major life milestone seem harder to reach? And the answer may be surprisingly simple. Because economic growth and human prosperity are not the same thing. One measures how much value is being created. The other measures who actually benefits from it. For decades, people assumed those two things moved together. Today, many people aren't so sure anymore. And maybe that's the real reason modern life feels so confusing. The economy keeps getting stronger, but for millions of people, life keeps feeling harder. And until those two realities start moving in the same direction again, that feeling probably isn't going away anytime soon.